Hello, everybody. My name is Randall Hunt, and I'm CTO of Caylent. And happy Developer Christmas to all who celebrate. reInvent is Developer Christmas. We're here today to talk about the reInvent recap, and we're going to go through all the announcements. I am joined by the amazing
Brian Tarbox, wearing the amazing Caylent Eat, Sleep, Lead, and Repeat shirt, um, and we're going to try to cram all of reInvent into the next little bit of time. So hang on.
So we'll start sharing the screen now. Okay, so this is a rapid fire description of reInvent. We're going to talk a little bit about Caylent. We're going to give some opinions. Brian and I have already been through over 400 hours of videos from reInvent, and this is sort of the early reInvent recap, right? Because we haven't had time to synthesize and distill all of that knowledge into fully actionable components, and some things are still in preview. So in January, we hope to release a more comprehensive reInvent recap that's going to have a lot more details about everything. But for those of you who may not be aware, reInvent is it's developer Christmas is how I like to refer to it. It's you and 60,000 of your closest friends all watch a bunch of sessions. You all take the hallway track and you get to meet all the great people from AWS who are building everything. And this is the deck that has all of the updates from reInvent. And I would be remiss if I did not mention that this deck is the product of a ton of AWS developer advocates. So this is not just Caylent working on this deck. This is a whole group of people at AWS and in the AWS community who come together to build this deck every year. And it's really fun to go through everything towards the end here. But we had over 400 updates in pre-invent, as we like to call it. And then we had over 600 updates at reInvent, or just under 600 updates at reInvent. And before we get into, we're going to provide some tools and tricks for parsing this deck and when you should have your phone ready, stuff like that. But before we get into that, I wanted to share that this was a really important year for Caylent because this is the first year that Caylent, our president and chief revenue officer, Val Henderson, was on stage in the AWS partner keynote. And we had a number of other really fun announcements and kind of interviews and fun things happening at reInvent. I really feel like this was the year that Caylent kind of launched forward in terms of our brand recognition at Caylent. And we won 3 different Partner of the Year awards. We won Migration Consulting Partner of the Year Global. We won the Generative AI Industry Solution Partner of the Year, and we won the Financial Services North America Partner of the Year. And all of this is really a testament to the amazing people like Brian who work here at Caylent and try to deliver for our customers every single day. And as Yoda says, do or do not. There is no try. That's why I'm wearing the R2D2 shirt today. All right.
And I'll say it was
Go ahead, Brian.
amazing how many people came up to us unprompted and said, "You work at Caylent. They're great." And it's like, yes, we are.
2024 is a good year to be a Caylent. Let's hope 2025 is even better. And with that, on to Developer Christmas. So to parse this deck, there is a handy dandy ledger. So if you see something that says GA, that means that it is generally available. If you see something that says public preview, it's public preview. If you see something that says preview, it's preview. Coming soon means it's coming soon. The color coding, orange means pre-invent, pink means reInvent. The service name is going to be in teal, and then open source is going to be green. And there's a couple of other things that you'll see throughout this deck. If you see a QR code, you can bring up your phone, you can scan that. It will take you to either the documentation page or the announcement page or the AWS News blog post. It all depends on which of these we think is going to be the most valuable for you. Now, in terms of the agenda, first we're going to cover my favorite topic, which is the global infrastructure updates by the numbers, which is always fun. Next, we'll cover compute, networking, security, identity, and compliance. Then we'll go into storage. We'll talk about databases and analytics, which is a natural follow-on from storage. We'll talk about AI and ML, which are a natural follow-on from databases and analytics. And we'll talk about app integration and serverless, then developer tools, management and governance. We'll talk about some of the new UI changes that exist within AWS. We'll talk about business applications. And then Brian's going to cover a couple of things in the miscellaneous section about just overall good things that we think AWS is doing. Now, one thing to say before we get started, this was the first year that we had Matt Garman delivering the keynote, and it was a marked difference from the Adam Selipsky keynotes. Matt Garman seems to be a different kind of leader. He seems really, really focused on delivering the best product experience as opposed to the most revenue or the most financial engineering. It seems like AWS has really rediscovered a lot of the developer focus that brought them to where they are today. And we're pretty excited. We're pretty bullish on the future of AWS given a lot of these announcements. So if you're ready, fasten your seatbelts and let's get to the recap. First, we are now at 34 launched regions with more on the way. We have 108 availability zones, 41 local zones, again, more on the way, 29 wavelength zones. Fun fact, this is the same number as last year, and you still can only work with certain mobile carriers for wavelength zones. So for those of you who are not aware, wavelength zones are AWS infrastructure that is attached to various 5G spots in urban areas. They can be really, really good for latency sensitive applications. Local zones are actually great as well. There's a great talk from Colm, who has a whole spiel on the different ways that local zones get built and why they are built that way. It's everything from digital sovereignty to latency sensitivity. Very impressive is that we have more direct connect locations than last year, 140 different points of presence for direct connect and connection points for direct connect. We have 700 points of presence within CloudFront. Now, interestingly, something that's very different from years before is that they also started launching what they call embedded points of presence within CloudFront. So these are the ability to take data centers that are not within the AWS ecosystem and send content to them. So overall, this makes for 1,600 plus points of presence for you to deploy your content to. And that's more capacity than AWS has delivered in the last 10 years that they've delivered in 1 year, which is incredibly impressive. And then the 13 regional edge caches are also very interesting. Those are where your Lambda at edge functions are running. So CloudFront functions, which are V8 isolates, they can run in these 700 points of presence, but the Lambda at edge functions typically only run in these regional edge caches. And this covers 90 plus cities. It's probably closer to 100 plus cities at this point, 47 countries. And then they peer with thousands of tier 1, 2, and 3 telecom providers. So that means that you are making fewer hops to get to your end customers when you work with AWS. Now, if you watched my recap last year, you saw that we were talking about the 400 gigabit fiber that was coming to the cloud. It is now here. So fully redundant 400 gigabit fiber circling the globe, links with thousands and thousands of networks. And for those of you who are curious, all of this is published under the AS16509 prefix. Now, truly impressive, this global infrastructure. You can see these pictures on the right. These were taken by one of our Caylent colleagues, Pete Bird. And these are some of the fibers. And we'll talk a little bit more about the fiber in a minute. But one of the things that I think AWS did that was very impressive is they've continued to innovate across the entire stack. So instead of just thinking about the software or instead of just thinking about the servers, they've thought about how to integrate the two very tightly. And so that gives way to the AWS Nitro system, which is a combination of custom silicon, top of rack switches, encryption mechanisms, and a software suite and a hypervisor suite that combine to provide this capability for these instances and these high bandwidth connections. And we are now on the 6th generation of Nitro. So this means that we can get 400 gigabits of throughput from a single network card in a server. And, as always, it's going to encrypt this at multiple layers. So it's always worth mentioning that security is job 0 for AWS. So the Nitro hypervisor, the Nitro card, the top of rack switch, everything, they all integrate tightly and encrypt traffic on multiple layers of the stack. So just the application level, the TLS level, the network over the wire level, everything else. Very powerful. Now, I wanted to talk about hollow core fiber. So if you imagine a bunch of nerds in Sunnyvale in Seattle sitting around and they're like, let's play with some lasers. And so they put on some special protective glasses and they all shine lasers down these tubes and they decide that the speed of light over fiber just isn't quite fast enough for them. So they created this thing called hollow core fiber. And when you think of the speed of light, you're probably thinking that the speed of light in air or space, which is a vacuum, is, the however many hundreds of thousands of miles per second. But C is the constant for the speed of light. And what happens there is when you put it through a medium like fiber, it does slow down a bit because it's kind of refracting around. It's going and bouncing off the sides. And the cumulative effect of all of those bounces does take time. So the speed of light in glass, which is what fiber is made out of, is only about 2/3 the real speed of light. And that's not great, right? To achieve latencies that are in line with the real physical limits of the universe, at least as far as we know so far, uh, the AWS team has created this thing called hollow core fiber. And this is a materials science and manufacturing innovation that allows them to deliver 30% improvement in latency, as well as a 47% faster version of fiber internet. So they don't, AWS, very importantly, makes these compounding tech investments year after year. To build something like this hollow core fiber construct, this isn't something that they started last year hoping for a great reInvent press release, right? This is the compounding effect of an investment in applied photonics and everything else that they've made over the last 10 years across their own silicon, across their own core infrastructure. I mean, they're even building special trucks for being able to do fiber cuts and put fiber into the ground. I can be a total nerd about this stuff, and we are a little bit strapped for time. So, with that, we're going to go right into compute and containers. And we'll start out by talking about the newest launch, which was a pre-invent launch, the predictive scaling for Amazon ECS. This allows you to turn on forecast and scale for your ECS clusters and tasks, and it will go and apply those. And you can set certain metrics like CPU utilization. And if you're interested in learning more about this one, please use the QR code. There's a great blog post from the containers blog, and then there's a great what's new announcement and link to the docs as well. Now, capacity reservations have been very interesting in that capacity reservations launched in 2018, but until now, they were addressed kind of like just in time. There was no way to say in the future at this date, I'm going to want these sorts of EC2 instances available. But a lot of times customers will know in advance for events like Black Friday or Cyber Monday, or one of our customers is Allergan, and they do Botox Day. So they have this big scaling day where everyone is signing up and getting these emails and these personalized announcements and stuff. And so you need more compute capacity when that happens. So the future dated capacity reservations gives you this ability to reserve instances well in advance, have them all delivered and available, and it ensures that availability of those instances. Now,
and it's especially important for those newer, higher end instances that are often in short supply. Media companies often need those for delivering an event.
absolutely. And there's another kind of capacity reservation mechanism that's available for some of those new P5 instances, for example, that we'll talk about later. Now, I realize not everyone spends all day trying to decipher obscure hieroglyphics from the AWS console, but I wanted to give a quick primer on instance names. So the first letter in an instance name is the instance family. So, C would be for compute. The next is the generation of that instance. So, for instance, a C5 is a fifth generation compute instance capability. Then there are multiple suffixes that can be applied, like an A. In this case, it means AMD. A G would mean graviton. And then the last part of it is the size. And so, there's a lot of different prefixes that are available. A is AMD, G is graviton, I is Intel, except when there's no I, in which case it's probably Intel. D is instant store volumes, N is network optimization, B is block storage optimization, E is extra storage or memory, Z is high frequency, and there's probably a couple of others that I've forgotten. But if you're trying to parse an instance name, this is how you break them apart. Now, when we get into the new instances that launched at AWS, I mean, like every year, 2024, you can't miss a set of new instances. So let's get down the list here and talk through the capabilities of these. So the i8G instances offer up to 96 vCPUs, 768 gigs of RAM, of memory, and up to 22.5 terabytes of NVMe storage to deliver more compute and storage choices compared to the i4G instances. These are the first instance type to use the third generation AWS Nitro SSDs. Those instances offer up to 22.5 terabytes of NVMe SSD storage with up to 65% better real-time storage performance per terabyte and 60% lower latency variability compared to the previous generation i4G instances. It makes sense because i4 and now i8, so we've been through a couple of generations here building up on the Graviton side. And these are based on the AWS Graviton 4 processors, which we could talk quite a bit about. There's a lot to dive into there. And if you're interested in learning more about the Graviton 4 processors, I'd strongly encourage you to go and check out Peter DeSantis's keynote. The i8G instances, they deliver up to 60% better compute performance and 2 times larger caches compared to the i4G. This has real world performance impacts. So you can talk about the benchmarks all you want, but just take the CPU cache size improvement and see how it performs in your actual systems. And I think you'll be surprised to see how much it saves you. One note on there's a couple other systems that launched this year with the AWS Nitro third gen SSDs, but these are custom built by AWS, these SSDs, or it's hard to say, are they NVMe, are they SSDs, are they some combination of the two because they connect with this Nitro system, but they offer this high performance, low latency, and very little latency variability. So a lot of times you'll find with shared systems, right, that there is latency variability when you go to the storage layer, but these have very little what we would call spikiness in the latency. And that's a very powerful and reliable component that you can build systems upon because you no longer have very wide error bars that you're dealing with in terms of storage. And then there's always on encryption. So that's the other component that exists with Nitro, is that it's encrypted at every layer of the stack. All i8G instances have some burst network bandwidth, and they can burst for over an hour. Depending on the instance sizes, they can go longer than several hours. And this is to support sort of hydration, backup, and snapshot over the network. So you're not limited to what you might see in the sustained bandwidth capabilities. All of them support burstable capacity. For now, these are only available in US East 1 and US West 2, but I expect more regions to come soon. Then we get into the i7-IE instances. These are the Intel instances of the I class, and they support up to 120 terabytes of NVMe storage. 120 terabytes of NVMe storage. I could host a crazy big Minecraft server on that one. They also offer up to 1.5 terabytes of memory, and they use the 5th generation Intel Xeon processors with an all-core turbo frequency of about 3.2 gigahertz. And we could probably talk a little bit more about those 5th gen processors later. But then we also have, powered by the Nitro SSDs, this is 20% better price performance than the previous generation. Very importantly about these newer Intel processors, first of all, there's the larger L3 cache. I can't remember exactly how big it is, but it's significantly larger. There's significantly increased memory bandwidth. And beyond the processing power, there's also improvements in the underlying instruction set. So VP2 intersect instruction, which is part of AVX 2, which is part of AVX 512, that really improves machine learning and graph processing workloads. And then there's AMX, which is the advanced matrix extensions, which can really improve the price performance of inference. Now, you can take advantage of those with various compilers. So if let's say you're using PyTorch, right? If you use Torch Compile, a lot of these things are built in to PyTorch at this point. So if you run Torch Compile on this machine and you say, I want to take advantage of the hardware optimized route, it will be able to take advantage of that. And then importantly, the largest version of this instance, which is the 48X large, that one contains, is able to be provisioned with what's called the Elastic Fabric Adapter, which launched a few years ago. That can really massively improve the networking performance. This one is currently only, this one is available in US East 1 and US East 2. More regions are coming very soon. They may already be out by the time that you're watching this. So I maybe should edit that slide to say 2 regions instead of 6, but whatever. Next, we have the P5 EN instances. These are the Intel version of the H200 GPUs. So we have Intel processors on these. You may already be familiar with the P5E, which is available with the AMD processor, but these P5E in instances actually use the Intel processors. So these are currently only available on AWS. These use the H200 Tensor Core GPUs, and it's a custom fourth generation Intel Xeon with an all-core turbo frequency of 3.2 gigahertz, but a max core turbo frequency of 3.8 gigahertz. These are pretty darn powerful, and there's a lot that you can do here, both in terms of networking throughput as well as in terms of overall capability with the ability to fast load into the GPU. But the really cool one is the P6 with the NVIDIA Blackwell GPUs. So we expect those to be available soon as well. And then I'm going to kick it over to Brian to talk about EKS Auto Mode, but I just want to give a shout out to a particular AWS product manager, Nathan Tabor, who has been trying to ship this feature for some time and has done a fantastic job on delivering it. But just a very brief overview of EKS Auto Mode is it basically takes away all this cluster management around compute, storage, and networking, and you just get it all for free. You say, I want you to manage it, Mr. and Mrs. AWS, and I don't want to care about any of the underlying stuff. You just tell me what I need to do, and I will allow you to do it.
Right. I'll say that the TLDR on auto mode this is, in my opinion, what EKS should have been when it first came out. When you run ECS, basically you specify what you want and you get it. And with EKS, lots of people have different opinions about Kubernetes, but in EKS you've still had to do quite a bit. With auto mode, they basically make it a lot more, as they say, automatic. And I'm glad to see this coming out. I think this will take away some of the bias that some people, including myself, have about EKS. So it's a welcome addition, and better late than never.
And if you think about the day-to-day operation of EKS clusters, we have hundreds of customers that have pretty large EKS clusters. Previously, you would defer the EKS control plane maintenance and management to AWS. This defers the underlying infrastructure, so the instances and everything, to EKS as well, and it'll automatically select the optimal compute instances. It'll dynamically scale on your resources, optimizing for cost or optimizing for something else if you wish, and it'll manage all of the add-ons like the Route 53 add-on or the DNS add-ons, the any service discovery add-ons. It'll patch the operating systems, it'll use the latest AMIs, and it'll make it easier to integrate with AWS services. So overall, by loading in the right operators and stuff, overall, I'm really pleased with this. I think it's a great launch, and congratulations to the EKS team that delivered it. Next, we have another EKS announcement, which is the EKS hybrid nodes. So you may have previously heard of what's called EKS Anywhere or ECS Anywhere. And this was the ability to extend the control plane of Kubernetes or ECS into your on-prem environment. Now, the problem previously with this initial iteration of EKS Anywhere and ECS Anywhere was that it was really just an agent that sort of sat on a machine, and it didn't really have a great idea of how to scale or unscale the different workloads. So this hybrid node implementation, to me, is the full realization of what you want in terms of keeping your Kubernetes control plane in one place and keeping your ability to access on-prem hardware in another place. And keep in mind, like, we're still fairly early days in the cloud, right? There's a tremendous number of people who have large footprints of on-prem resources that they would love to be able to manage using EKS. And this actually makes it much more tenable as opposed to the previous iteration. And the other thing that I'll say is, if you think about the cost of these big GPU farms, if you're trying to rent all of these GPUs in the cloud, it can be prohibitively expensive. But you can acquire a lot of these older GPUs, especially. A lot of the older GPUs are available at a pretty low cost. You can build a farm of those and you can expose it to Kubernetes, and now you have your own farm for training these large language models or these foundation models. Now, the other component of that too is that you get to depreciate that hardware over time. So for some businesses, these hybrid nodes are going to be a massive gain. And for businesses that have digital sovereignty issues, or for businesses that need to be able to run in very specific zones or locations for their end customers, this is also going to be a big win.
Right.
Overall, another great piece of work from Nathan Tabor and the whole EKS team. So great work here, you guys.
And sort of a meta message from this is that um, when Amazon launches a service, they're not launching the service at version 10. They're launching, most services start at version 1. And you may say, well, that version 1 of whatever the service is, has something that makes it unusable for me. Don't write it off forever. Check back, because they keep iterating, and the thing that oh my god, if only they had this. Well, very often they add that.
Yep, it's true. I mean, things always evolve. Now we have Amazon Elastic VMware Service, and the Caylent opinion of this is that Broadcom bought VMware, and some customers are in a tough spot, and this is going to help those customers get through a tough time with their migration path. One of the things that we do at Caylent is we help customers move off of VMware onto various implementations of modern software. And it's not a knock on VMware. We think VMware built some amazing stuff over the years, but the reality is that Broadcom's pricing model has become predatory, and we don't really see a future for smaller VMware customers, because Broadcom doesn't see a future for those customers either. They want to focus on the big folks and just have those folks, print some money for them. And this is a nice little stopgap for people who are stuck in a tight place with their VMware migration story. And if you're one of those folks and you need some help, Caylent is here. That's my sales pitch for the day. And then we get into the Trainium 2 processors and instances. So Trainium was talked about last year. I think, and Peter DeSantis spoke about it in his keynote again this year. To me, this is just a testament to the incredible progress being made in silicon design. There's this great scene in the keynote. If you have a moment to go and look at it, I'd strongly urge you to. It's where they show the interplane for the high bandwidth memory, and they show the way that the processor is constructed, and it truly requires a design that thinks in multiple dimensions, and is a truly kind of impressive set of silicon advances. And to take advantage of Trainium 2, we used to only think about it for training workloads, right? We've found that it actually is pretty darn good for inference workloads as well. So maybe we should rename it to just really cool silicon. I think that's a great name for a processor. But these chips, right? They're 4 times faster, have 4 times more memory bandwidth, and 3 times the memory capacity of the first generation TRN1 instances. And they have a better 40% better price performance than the current generation of GPU-based P5Es and P5En instances. So those GPU-based instances that we were just talking about, you get 40% better price performance on this custom silicon than you do on the GPU instances. Now, the downside of that is that you do need to compile your models to take advantage of this underlying hardware. Luckily, the Neuron SDK has made some, which is the tool that you use to compile these models. It's made some really strong strides, and it has improved dramatically over the last 2 years. And so you can take a lot more models than you were previously able to take and put them onto Trainium and realize those savings. On the networking side, there's also the Elastic Fabric adapter, version 3, which provides the ability to have these like a whole cluster of Trainium 2 chips that you'd have 192 CPUs, and you'd have 2 terabytes of memory, and you'd have 3.2 terabytes of interconnect bandwidth between these different not GPUs. I'm going to keep saying GPUs because that's what I'm used to saying, but these are really custom silicon, hardware accelerated servers. And that gives you the ability to provision these into a placement group or something and say, I really want to just go as fast as I can and build the best possible instance that I can. And that's not everything, by the way, because the TRN2 Ultra servers are a completely new compute offering, and they have up to 64 Trainium 2 chips that are connected over this high bandwidth, low latency neuron link interconnect. And this is great for both inference and training on frontier models. And the Nova models, and even Anthropic with the additional $4 billion investment that AWS made, uh, are using these custom silicon components to build their next generation models. I think getting access to these, if you are not a name brand customer, is going to be a little bit difficult. But I think the capability of these instances is phenomenal, and we were lucky enough to get a little bit of time to play around with it. And I can attest to the fact that it's really fun to like log into one of these machines and just see them power away at some workloads. There were a couple of other announcements. So we got deployment history for ECS services, and that's a nice little quality of life update. It helps us be able to understand what and audit different changes that are happening. On the EKS side, it's now easier to provide IAM permissions to EKS add-ons. This can really help too, by the way, with some of the DNS enhancements that Route 53 made last year. And then the Kubernetes control plane monitoring now emits a significantly larger number of troubleshooting, not troubleshooting messages, but just observability messages that will help you understand, I'm hitting a boundary condition. And, we had a customer essentially that was hitting some of the boundary conditions of Kubernetes ability to scale. They just had a ton of nodes and a ton of different pods that were all running simultaneously, and it was more than what the Kubernetes control plan was designed to deal with. And so we were able to build like this multi-cluster vending machine for them, but we might have been able to identify that sooner if we'd had these control plane log messages available to us back then. So I'm very excited to see these available to us now. We'll talk about in the monitoring section about some of the container insights and enhanced observability available there. Those are all great. Container Insights has continued to provide additional capabilities and enhancements every year, so it continues to be a valuable thing to turn on. And we also get a sustainability component, which allows us to see the power usage effectiveness. And I don't remember exactly how this one is exposed, if it's through that AWS console sustainability platform or if it's right there in the EC2 side. But either way, it's nice that these numbers are being made available, and it lets you make some intelligent decisions about where you're going to run your workloads and what you want your utilization to be. And now we're going to talk about networking and content delivery. You might have noticed that I'm a huge networking nerd from the earlier slides, but CloudFront now supports gRPC APIs. This was a pre-invent launch, and I think it's a very good one. And there's a tremendous amount of capability that exists within the gRPC ecosystem. There's a lot of different reasons that AWS built this, but the other advantage of this is that you can throw WAFs and other firewall and DDoS protections in front of these APIs. So a great launch. Really glad that it's available to us now. Amazon CloudFront now has different VPC origins, so you can restrict access to certain ALBs or NLBs or EC2 instances and private subnets. This is a pretty powerful feature that makes it easy to secure web applications, and it prevents a lot of the networking rigmarole that you had to go through previously. So you can now take things that are in private subnets and expose them via CloudFront without ever actually having a public IP address for those systems. This is going to be really good for a number of different use cases. One of the ones I was just thinking about is some of the stuff with the NLB side, where you can do certain UDP exposures that previously you would have not been able to do. CloudFront Functions got an update, and I continue to be surprised at how few people know about CloudFront Functions. If you heard in the beginning of this presentation, I referenced the V8 isolates, which are where the CloudFront functions run. But Amazon CloudFront Functions now supports origin modification within CloudFront Functions, which can allow you to conditionally change or update the origin servers on a request. So if you have a JA3 fingerprint or a cookie or something that makes you want to go to a particular origin, or if you wanted to select a particular origin based on a user's language preference or a header that you got, you can now do all of those things. And this logic runs so quickly. It's in a V8 isolate, and you pay very, very little for it. So CloudFront Functions, please don't sleep on them. They're very powerful, and this is a great update. VPC resources are now available via AWS Private Link. This is particularly good for AWS Step Functions or Amazon Event Bridge, for instance. You can share these instances across account boundaries. And if you think about who this will really provide a tremendous amount of value to, think about ISVs. Typically these ISVs, they have to expose these public endpoints and they have to build these firewalls. They have to build all this other stuff. If they can just provision a private link inside of your account, that saves them a tremendous amount of time and effort, and they don't need to put all of these additional controls in place because they know that it's secure. It's transiting over the AWS backbone. It's getting a lot of capability that you might not otherwise be able to expose. This was sort of telegraphed right before reInvent, but then it came out in GA at reInvent, and it's a tremendous improvement in the overall networking situation. We also got better support for Lattice within ECS. Lattice is a whole topic in and of itself. We could spend a full day talking about that, and we do have some slides later talking about some of the improvements there. Load balancer capacity unit reservations for ALBs and NLBs. Again, improvements on that ability to forecast and scale. UDP support for private link and dual stack NLBs. This is more of what I was talking about earlier with the UDP capabilities. And Amazon VPC Lattice got TCP support for VPC resources. Lattice is something that you should investigate and think about in terms of networking modernization. If you have not explored it yet, have your networking guru at your company go and look into it. And with that, we're going to kick into storage migration and transfer services. We've got 19 announcements, 11 that came before reInvent. The first is S3 static website hosting. So this was already possible, but this is significantly easier now. And you can click right into Amplify hosting to be able to run your static website. This previously with the S3 setup, you had to make it the same domain. The bucket had to be named a certain way. You had to set up the CloudFront distribution. This just sort of takes care of all of that for you. And it has all kinds of features, including HTTPS and redirects and custom headers, and it's deployed on CloudFront automatically without you having to go and manage that distro. We got time-based snapshot copy for EBS, so you can now specify a desired completion duration when you are trying to restore a snapshot. This does come with a pricing change, so you basically pay more to get the snapshot restored faster. This makes perfect sense to me, and there's some default prevent yourself from shooting yourself in the foot rates that are there. So I think like the defaults are 2 gigs per second between each source and destination pair. And if you're in a bad situation where you're trying to recover from an outage, being able to move to this other region, right? Like you might not want to wait for the best effort version of this copy. You might want to go ahead and pay for the, I don't care what this cost me, I just need it up as soon as possible. And you can specify the value in minutes. So, and I think it's only available in 15-minute increments. And yeah, that's a great kind of improvement. I haven't had the time to go deep into the pricing yet, but if you check out this AWS News blog post, it'll tell you more. And there's a handy dandy calculator link that's available right in the console for you. FSX for Lustre increased its throughput. This is particularly good for those of you working with, so Lustre is already a high performance file system that's meant for a lot of these machine learning workloads. And through TCP, it was limited to about 100 gigabits per second for individual client instances. This is more geared towards the high performance computing side. It uses specialized silicon, and it will help customers really deliver very high speed connections to their file system. So I think this now goes up to 1.2 terabits per second, which is kind of a lot, like a lot, and really impressive. And if we had said those numbers 10 years ago, we all would have been laughed out of the room.
Right, a
Okie dokie.
12x a 12x increase is noteworthy.
Yeah. No big deal. Just 12x faster. And we got data integrity protections in Amazon S3. This is just a nice improvement so that we're not using SHA-1 anymore. We can use a number of different algorithms to improve the multi-part uploads and different CRC-based object checksums. This is really just bringing S3 up to par with modern capabilities. There was storage browser for Amazon S3, which is exposed through a UI component in Amazon Amplify UI. This one's kind of interesting, and I think this one actually might have been responsible for a very brief period of reduced availability within AWS. So I think the implementation of this is very solid, and I think it's a great quality of life improvement. So for those of you who are already using Amplify or already using Amplify UI, you can now throw in a little browsable S3 component. This will be particularly helpful for ISVs who are provisioning S3 buckets or exposing S3 buckets underneath. But good job, Amplify team, and good job, S3 team, on collaborating. It's always nice to see. The transfer family of storage services got a no-code web app that allows authenticated users to work on objects as if they are files and directories. And this is a nice quality of life improvement again, and you can learn more at the link. FSX got intelligent tiering specifically for OpenZFS, and this can reduce your cost up to 85%. Fun fact, we used to run a ZFS cluster at SpaceX, and we used that to store all the telemetry data related to rocket launches. And being able to have intelligent tiering that would automatically move our less frequently accessed data to a lower cost storage tier would have been very nice, because instead our only option was to provision a ton of SSDs and hope for the best. And sometimes hoping was not sufficient and we would lose data.
It's great to see this technology from S3 coming over to FSX.
Absolutely. Also new is AWS Data Transfer Terminal, which is, think about, the Amazon Prime lockers that you have at like Whole Foods and stuff like that, or around the country. Imagine a world where you walk up and you just plug in a hard drive and you say, put this into S3 for me. Well, that's a real thing that you can do now. So AWS Data Transfer Terminal is this new offering, and it's a secure physical location that you can reserve. And you can bring your storage devices or your snowballs, and you can upload your data to AWS. It's kind of funny.
And this is a nice complement to the deprecation of Snowmobile, because people when not a lot of people were using Snowmobile, and so it was deprecated. But I also heard that one of the reasons for this was the concern that your snowmobile could get hijacked on the highway. Who knew about that?
Nation state actors have a lot of resources available to them to be able to do some crazy stuff. So now this says it's available in Los Angeles and New York, but it's really New Jersey, but we won't give them a hard time for that today. And with that, I'd like to kick it over to Brian to talk about S3 tables and S3 metadata.
Right. Well, S3 is one of my favorite areas, and new types of. I mean, for the longest time, just S3. There were just S3 buckets, and then we're getting different types of buckets, the express zones, and now the S3 table. The ability to create a bucket specifically designed for Apache Iceberg. The performance is incredible. And it's all pretty automatic. And this ties very closely with the next feature, which is the metadata. Part of the thing is that we put so much information into S3, and then how do we find it? And a typical pattern is that you have your files in S3, your objects in S3, even though we think of them as files, and then you have DynamoDB to store all your information about those S3 objects, so you can find them. Well, now they've pushed that into S3 metadata, so that pattern of DynamoDB for the metadata is likely going to go away. The metadata goes in S3 um, uh, table bucket. So you create a table, you say I want metadata for it, you automatically get about 26 items of metadata put in there, but then you can programmatically add more ones. And as you put information into your S3 bucket in near real time, so it's not real time, but it's minutes, not hours, the metadata gets automatically added. And then you can do all your iceberg operations very, very quickly, and you can find your data because it's pretty easy to have so much data and not know what's there. So this is just a wonderful new extension of S3, which is one of the oldest services. But as we said before, it keeps getting better and better.
I love the fact that S3 is 15 plus years old and continues to get better. So, a couple of other quick announcements is that the default limit on the number of buckets is up. S3 got the ability to do conditional writes. If you think about workloads where you have to retry S3 connections, so things that are accessing S3 a lot, it's actually in S3's docs to say, hey, go ahead, start a couple different connections and then see which one's faster. This conditional write capability is fantastic. S3 Express One Zone, which Caylent was a launch partner for, by the way, now has the ability to append data to an object, which is fantastic. It supports 3 additional regions and conditional deletes, and it has lifecycle expiration. So the lifecycle policies are already a great part of S3 Express One Zone, and this is just extending those capabilities. And then DMS got support for data masking when you're going to S3, and then cross-account replication for Amazon EFS, which is important if you've got sort of like a DMZ or something like that you're trying to get a backup of. And then DMS also has automated schema conversion using generative AI, which Caylent has extended already and has worked with the DMS team on their release. And that is called our SQL Polyglot or AI Evolution or whatever marketing decided to call it this week. All right. And with that, we're into databases, and we're going to pick up the pace here, folks, because we don't have a ton of time left, but we have 14 announcements, 10 pre-invent. We have Aurora SQL, Aurora Postgres Limitless. So this came in GA and pre-invent, and this is really just the extension of the private preview that was announced at reInvent. And with this capability, your relational database workloads on Aurora can go beyond the limit of a single writer instance without needing to create any custom application logic or think about any sharding. So gone are the days of PG Bouncer or sharding, and instead you just get to go to one particular cluster endpoint, and it takes care of the sharding for you. And so it will add additional compute resources while staying within your specified budget, and there's no need to provision for peak and compute, and it'll automatically scale down as needed. Then we get into DynamoDB warm throughput. This is an extension, again, of the capabilities of AWS to pre-provision. So if you are a good citizen of the cloud, you can go ahead and say, I want to be able to move fast on this table for this period of time. And really, if you want deeper details on this, I'd encourage you to go back and look at some of the Rick Houlihan and Alex Debris talks from reInvent over the years that talk about the way that sharding was handled within DynamoDB and how people would initially intentionally over provision their DynamoDB tables and then scale back down later. This removes the need to do that. So with warm throughput, you can basically already handle the traffic demands that you're looking for. Very importantly, on-demand mode for DynamoDB just casually got a 50% price reduction. So congrats to Joseph Edzorek and the rest of the DynamoDB team for being able to pass on a massive amount of savings to customers. Fun fact, if you were using on-demand DynamoDB in November, your bill just casually got reduced by 50%. So you didn't have to change a line of code. You didn't have to update anything. You just paid less money. I love the fact that the DynamoDB underlying infrastructure has probably changed like 30 times since it was released. And we, as users of it, have never even noticed, except when the costs get lower. Fantastic release. Very important is that Amazon Aurora Serverless is now actually serverless for Postgres. It will actually scale to 0. So if you remember previously, the lowest you could go was either 0.5 ACUs of Aurora capacity units, or it might have been 2 ACUs. I can't remember. But now it actually scales to 0. And even more importantly is that it can scale up very quickly, like sub-minute scaling up, which is impressive. This is really nice for dev workloads, for example, where, over the weekend I may not be working. So maybe we just scale to 0. But instead of me having to set a policy to say, hey, scale to 0 for me, I don't have to. It just does it. MemoryDB got multi-region capabilities. This was a pretty nice announcement, and the capabilities within MemoryDB, it's really just think of Valkey or Redis as having like a persistence layer. So it's nice to have, and I think about this a lot. I've always thought MemoryDB probably should have just been a check mark inside of Elasticache to say, yep, store my data even if the instance restarts, and charge me a little extra. But MemoryDB is doing good work, and the Valkey Redis open source stuff is still going on. It became easier to use Oracle databases on AWS. I don't care about Oracle, so we're going to skip through most of this. But if you are interested, please use this QR code. We got multi-region strong consistency across DynamoDB global tables, so you can now set a read concern and write concern that are strongly consistent. Keep in mind, this will slow down your read and writes, right? So it's not like you get this for free. In our initial experiment on the US West 2 and US East 2, US East 1 and US East 2, we didn't detect more than like 2 extra milliseconds of latency. But, between US East 1 and US West 2, there could be more. Very interesting announcement, and definitely important for certain transactional workloads, but otherwise probably not something a ton of people are going to need. DSQL. So this is a flavor of Aurora that's available in public preview and is kind of like AWS's answer to Spanner. It can scale to meet any workload demand without database sharding or instance upgrades. There's no underlying infrastructure for you to manage. It's just this like SQL endpoint that's designed for 4 nines of availability and probably 5 nines of in single region and 5 nines in multi-region. And it's got an active distributed architecture, which makes it great for building synchronous applications. There's a great set of blog posts from Mark Brooker and a couple other folks at AWS that are important to talk about. This is not magic, people. I don't want people to think the cap theorem has been broken. There are constraints within this. For instance, foreign key constraints can't be enforced. You can still join over foreign keys. You just can't have foreign key enforcement. So it's not magical, but a lot of the things that happen within these database workloads, right, is that they will go and intentionally break out of the normal form for scaling reasons. And for those customers who have already sort of broken out of the normal form and the 3 different layers of indirection, the double foreign key tables, all that stuff, for those customers who have already normalized some of this data and are fine with replaying some of that capability into the application layer, this is a massive gain. And the price point seems attractive as well.
Right. And there were 2 really good breakout sessions on this. One that was going over ways to take better advantage of it. And then another one that was, hey, this is all under the covers and you don't need to know this, but if you want to geek out, here's how it all works. So I'd recommend both of those.
Absolutely. And those were both from Mark Brooker, I think. Clockbound is a new open source tool for generating, comparing, and error correcting timestamps from trusted time service. NTP, time service, ChronyD, and all of the other capabilities there are absolutely fascinating. It involves clocks and crystals, and long story short, there's the electricity and there's the silicon that goes into AWS, and then time is the other backbone of AWS. And they continue to make massive improvements in time synchronization. They use FPGA hardware on specialized Nitro cards. There's way too much to cover about how the magical satellites get the magical time to the magical FPGA cards. But if you are interested in time and how it affects our perception and ability to write code and do formal proofs, please just go check out this repo and check out all the talks. TimeStream got provisioned compute units for live analytics. Postgres supports PG Vector 8.0, which has improvements for hybrid queries, by the way, and a little bit of kernel tuning capabilities. Valkey got support for the new client interface, which is a lot faster. RDS blue-green deployments. This is great quality of life improvement, by the way, is the ability to shrink volumes when you've done an optimization. So previously, you couldn't shrink the underlying volumes and when you did a redeployment. So this allows you to do that. And then automatic minor upgrades for Postgres. All right, now we're getting into analytics. We'll again try to pick up the pace here. We have so much more to get through. So Express Brokers for Amazon MSK, so managed Kafka. It delivers up to 3 times more throughput per broker, and it scales 20 times faster as well, and reduces the recovery time by 90% compared to standard brokers. Express brokers are pre-configured with all the Kafka best practices and support the various Kafka APIs, and they provide the same low latency performance that MSK is used to providing. And in addition, Express brokers offer unlimited storage, so there's no need to pre-provision, and you don't have any disk-related bottlenecks to worry about, which does make cluster sizing simpler, and you really only have to set your ingress and egress throughput divided by the recommended per broker throughput. The downside of this is that it costs more, but oh well. Database CDC with Amazon Data Firehose, so formerly known as Amazon Kinesis Data Firehose. So this now allows you to take changes that happen in RDS instances or Postgres databases or MySQL databases and stream them into Iceberg tables. This is another kind of extension on the idea of zero ETL. It's in public preview right now. There's no charges right now for the public preview, but this will definitely cost money at some point in the future. And then the other thing that the team is working on, which I think is interesting, and they sort of pre-announced this, is they're adding support for SQL Server, Oracle, and Mongo, which could build a whole new set of capabilities in terms of heterogeneous database migrations. And it creates all the right stuff within the tables, and it works over private link and everything. So you don't have to worry about exposing a bunch of stuff. Just very casually and pre-invent the throughput for Kinesis streams. The previous limits on Amazon KDS were 2 gigabytes per stream for writers and 4 gigabytes per stream for readers. Now you have 5x that. You have 10 gigabytes per stream and for writers and 20 gigabytes per stream for readers. Just very casual. Don't have to change any code, 5x increase.
Yeah, right.
Fun fact, if you want to take advantage of these improved rates, you do need to update your Kinesis client because it has the Kinesis client library in Java and some of the other capabilities. They do have certain assumptions built in the older versions to not overwhelm Kinesis. There were various AI upgrades for Apache Spark inside of AWS Glue. There's some, kind of integration issues for now, some limitations that exist with like Glue 4.0 versus 5.0. Give AWS a minute to work this out. There's probably a reason it's in private preview. Let's chat again in a few months, and I think we will find that it will go to 5.0 and not just to 4.0. Clean rooms got updates. Clean rooms, we've seen a very small number of customers take advantage of this, but it's an ability to do differential privacy and to share predictive insights with partners without actually exposing some of the underlying data. So with this launch, companies and their partners, they're going to be able to train machine learning models and run inference on these collective data sets without actually having to share any of those models or any of that inference. Nice little launch. Amazon SageMaker version 4, 5, who knows at this point. 2017, I wrote the Amazon SageMaker general availability launch post. That was a great reinvent. I don't think I slept for 72 hours, but this is the whatever iteration of SageMaker. And I, I get a little ticked off every time there's a new studio, there's a new whatever. And like, can we just update the existing one? But they did appear to finally get it right. So congrats to the SageMaker team. It is in public preview. Interested in seeing what the pricing might shake out to be, because right now there isn't any pricing. If it's free, awesome, good job. If it's not free, probably still pretty good, as long as it's not like user-based pricing. One of the interesting things here is SageMaker Lakehouse, which I would have expected to be exposed under a different namespace. Maybe I would have expected this maybe under the Redshift namespace or even the S3 namespace, but it was exposed under the SageMaker namespace. And this is really the foundation for the next generation of Amazon SageMaker and Amazon SageMaker Unified Studio. And it's a storage layer that leverages the Lakehouse architecture and combines the best of both worlds from data warehouses and data lakes. And underneath, it's implemented on top of S3 tables and Amazon Redshift and something called RMS, which is Redshift Managed Storage. And these two elements combined with Iceberg tables basically give you the ability and flexibility to access and query all your data in place and amend it and do other things with it. So this is all tightly integrated with EMR, Glue, Redshift, various Athena, all the other good things you're used to. And I expect it over time to probably provide access to a number of other things, either through zero ETL or through direct connectors. So congrats to the SageMaker or Redshift or S3 team. I can't quite tell who launched this, but thanks. Now we have Glue 5.0. Just overall, like really good stuff. A lot of nice updates. And this is improved performance, enhanced security. It integrates with SageMaker Unified Studio and SageMaker Lighthouse. Upgrades to Spark 3.52, upgrades to Java 17, Hootie 0.15, Iceberg 1.61, Delta Lake 3.2, all around just general improvements and capability enhancements. And there's a lot more that goes into Glue 5.0 besides just the version updates. So if you're interested in learning more, there's a couple of talks at reInvent that are linked to in this QR code. Now we get into scenario analysis with QuickSight Q. This is an additional extension of Q for QuickSight that can provide an interface over your business intelligence data. We got data lineage tracking across AWS tools, so not just within Data Zone, which is now GA, by the way, but also exposed through SageMaker Unified Studio. This is pretty useful if you are doing things like business intelligence, but it can also be useful in the concept and the design of different models, because understanding where the data comes from helps you understand the capabilities and veracity of the models. Way too many things to cover here, but if you want to take a screenshot and dive in, all of these things will be linked. The Redshift Query Editor was a pre-invent launch. This is it has Amazon Q suggestions and all kinds of other things, and advanced scaling and all this other good stuff. All right, and now we're into machine learning AI and generative AI. 46 announcements. 17 pre-invent. Prompt optimization in Bedrock. This is a way for Bedrock to go and automatically rewrite your prompts for you. Just in the interest of time, I'm going to skip forward here. The magic button there is that optimize button. You press that, it'll take the prompt that you used initially, it'll look at the results, and it'll say, okay, I'm going to rewrite this prompt for you. At launch, this supports Claude 3.5 Sonnet, Claude Sonnet Opus, Claude Haiku, Llama 3, Llama 3.1, Mistral Large 2, and the Titan Text Premier models. It will, of course, support other models in the future, I bet. Amazon Bedrock Flows is now generally available. This came out right before reInvent, and this is just taking the preview of Bedrock Flows and making it available. Guardrails now support knowledge bases and prompt nodes, and you get good detailed traceability, and you get the complete execution path showing the input, output, execution time, any errors within the nodes. And overall, this can be a nice little API call to build agentful or at least just plain prompt flows. You can now scale down to 0 for Amazon SageMaker. This is great for serverless inference, and if you have periodic behavior, of course, it saves you money. Amazon Q for Business got a number of new features. Some are in private preview, some are live. Q apps, connectors, and integrations. There's a lot here. The Q connectors still seem to be based on the Kindred connectors, and we could probably get some improvements from those. So hopefully we will see some improvements on the Kindred connector or Q connector side soon. But otherwise, all these other announcements are great. Q got the ability to do some workflow automation. This is coming soon. This is not, parts of it are GA, but the majority of it is coming soon. And this can work with different ISVs and provide a lot of additional capabilities. And it can also integrate with things like Slack, Microsoft Teams, and other things. We got a number of different updates for Amazon Bedrock. We got support for custom connectors into knowledge bases. This is really powerful. Support for re-ranking models like Cohere's re-rank, for example. We now have RAG, retrieval augmented generation evaluation, which is in preview, and that's a great capability, as well as LLM as judge capability. This is also great for your evals, although if you run a giant eval job with an LLM as judge, be prepared to pay the bill. We got model distillation within Bedrock. This is a great capability to take a larger model and use it to train a smaller model on a specific set of tasks. This can ultimately end up saving a tremendous amount of money because you don't have to run the big model to be able to get the same results that you are looking for. And this works now with the Amazon, Meta, and Anthropic model families with varying sizes for teacher and student. Automated reasoning in Bedrock Guardrails. This is actually one of the most unique capabilities that Amazon has in the generative AI space. This is as far as I know, AWS is the only cloud provider to expose automated reasoning in generative AI. This is really a strong capability that AWS has been investing in for years. So we were talking earlier about the compounding tech investments that AWS makes. This is another great example of that. Multi-agent collaboration. This is in private preview or public preview, I guess. This is the ability for different agents to collaborate on different tasks and subtasks, and for one orchestration agent to kind of farm things out to other specialized agents. Bedrock got a marketplace, so people can now vend and collect dollars. Some of these are provisioned inside of SageMaker, but essentially it's access to hundreds of popular and emerging and specialized foundation models through Amazon Bedrock. Prompt caching. Oh, sorry. Before we get to prompt caching, we have Amazon Nova. These are a new class of models. This is the first real foundation model that AWS has exposed. Nova Premier, Nova Pro, Nova Lite, and Nova Micro. Caylent was a launch partner for these, and we are really very impressed with the initial versions. And I would expect in 2025 that we'll get an even better set of models. We really enjoyed tightly collaborating with AWS on these, and then coming soon are an any-to-any model as well as a speech-to-speech model.
And we demonstrated those in at the conference with Bedrock Battleground, and we were shocked at how fast Nova is, especially with image generation. But for everything else, I mean, we'd see an image come up in seconds when some of the other models would take dozens of seconds or 20 seconds. Really, really fast.
And keep in mind, that was before everyone else was using it. But no. The reason that they're so fast is that they are using some of this hardware accelerated compute that's available with Trainium and Inferentia. Prompt caching. Prompt caching is great. We had been hoping for this for quite some time. Essentially, what you do is you can set cache points in the messages, and the cache context remains available for up to 5 minutes after each access. So every time you access it again, it stays in the cache. In prompt caching, it can reduce your cost up to 50% and your latency by up to 85% for the supported models. We're huge fans of this. Our customers are already using it. And it does necessitate potentially a redesign of some of your prompts that may go counter to some of the advice that exists in current prompt engineering guides. If you need help with this, come talk to Caylent. We got enhanced processing and retrieval in Bedrock, so we can now parse documents. there's a lot more to this inside of the knowledge base side. So previously it would take different text. We got GraphRag. This is the ability to use Amazon Neptune Analytics to be able to retrieve things. And then we got structured data retrieval, which we built our reInvent session guide and session concierge on top of structured data retrieval through Amazon Bedrock knowledge bases into SQL. Lots and lots of amazing stuff coming from the Bedrock Knowledge Bases team, and they continue to move forward at a rapid clip. Multimodal toxicity detection and guardrails. Previously, we could get toxicity detection inside of text. Now we get it inside of images too. Great set of launches in terms of really improving the inferences that come out of these things. We got a ton of updates for SageMaker HyperPod that makes it easier to flexible training plans, task governance, recipes. This will really help people who are already taking advantage of these capabilities to take further advantage of them. A ton of other announcements, fine tuning, binary embeddings, Poly got new voices. We got AI service cards. We got different partner AI apps exposed through SageMaker. We got the generative AI index inside of Kindra. And we got 39 new data sets in the AWS Open Data repo. All right, and now we're into app integration and serverless. We have 12 announcements, 12 pre-invent. Amazon AppSync events. This was a release that came out right at the beginning of pre-invent. In my opinion, it's one of the best AppSync announcements in a really long time. It's just giving you an event API over WebSockets for AppSync. So great job to the AppSync team. Really excited about this. Little weird component of this one is that there doesn't seem to be an ability to like close a connection from the client side. So might want to experiment with that and see if there's any sort of impact. Amazon EventBridge latency reduction. So EventBridge just casually announced a 94% improvement in end-to-end latency for event buses. You don't have to change any code. You don't have to do anything. It just runs faster now. That is crazy. AWS Lambda SnapStart for .NET and Python. So we had SnapStart available for Java previously. Now we have it for .NET. The .NET side made a lot of sense. I think it was probably a very similar implementation to the SnapStart for Java. The Python one seems to be complete magic, and I don't understand how the Lambda team was able to implement this. I mean, there's freezing RAM, but then there's the way that you unpickle and pickle things, and like how the Firecracker micro VM memory snapshots work, and the disk state, and how it gets cached and restored. All in all, amazing job by the Lambda team, feat of engineering, and typically with very no code changes, you can immediately begin to realize speed improvements across Python, C#, F#, and even PowerShell, if that's the kind of person that you want to be. We got event source mappings for CloudWatch metrics. So the AWS Lambda team announced a new set of ESMs, which provide customers the ability to understand the state of events across SQS, Kinesis, and DynamoDB. You can opt in to receive metrics like dropped event count or deleted event count or on failure destination. These are great observability improvements that you should turn on for mission critical workloads. JSON-ATA and variables within step functions. So there was a tremendous amount of Lambda functions that I had within my step functions that their sole job was to do a little bit of data transform. Like one of the ones that was just really annoying to do was to transform a date, for example. Now with JSON-ATA and variables within this step functions capability, I don't have to do that anymore. This doesn't cost me anything either. So, my complexity of my step functions goes down significantly. I'm not having to write all these JSON path variables. I can just sort of transform the input and the output and assign a variable and persist that variable through only when it's relevant to the downstream payload. Great work. Love this. Want more of it. Provision mode for event source mapping so that we can go ahead and say we need extra capacity or we need extra capability. If we know we're scaling, we can go ahead and say that we want to scale up. This is available for Kafka, not yet available for SQS, but if you are already hitting the boundary conditions of SQS, you have a good problem, I hope. Python 3.3, 3.13, Node.js 22, Uh, Font injection service now supports Lambda. That is a great launch. Congratulations to Adrian Hornsby, who's the PM on that team, and all the great work that your team does to bring font injection service everywhere. This is the sort of chaos engineering that we all need. S3 support as a failed event destination, so you no longer have to use just a DLQ. You can now just put all those in S3 and deal with them later. This can be really great for rerunning failed workloads as like a cron job or something. AWS AppSync now supports cross-account sharing of GraphQL APIs. Great, exposed to RAM. And then there's new APIs for Amazon Location Service, exposing routes, places, and maps. I also think there was a small price reduction. Developer tools, management, and governance, 33 announcements, 19 pre-invent. We got the timeline view for AWS CloudFormation, which, Brian, take it away. I know this is
Oh
one
my
of your
God.
favorite launches.
This is amazing. As someone who's been the guy at 2 a.m. watching an emergency deployment going out, uh, being able to see a progress bar is tremendously helpful. It also helps when you've got a VP sitting over your shoulder saying, "Get it back up, get it back up," and it's like, "Well, it's moving." So this is a wonderful quality of life improvement.
Brian, I've never messaged you at 2 a.m. screaming about something being down.
No, it
How
wasn't.
could
It
you
wasn't you.
possibly
It was back in the day, man.
All right. We got the general availability of AWS App Studio, which is a no-code set of tools to build apps quickly. Um, we got the AWS Amplify AI kit. I actually love this launch. I think the team that built it did an amazing job, and it's the downside is it is coming a little late. So migrating to this off of say like Vercel's AI SDK or off of like LangChain or something is non-trivial. It doesn't use the same format or anything, but it's so just straightforward, I guess, in terms of like it's the API that I would want and it's the API that I would expect. So I just want to say congrats to the team. I think you guys did a great job, and thanks for building it. And we hope to take advantage of it in the near future. If people want to see uh, what this looks like with the Vercel AI SDK, check out the battleground.caylent.com. We also open source that, and we are working on a version of this that's built on top of the Amplify AI SDK. There's also a nice new AI conversation React UI component, which is going to make it easier to build some of these things quickly. We also got application signals for AWS Lambda. So CloudWatch had application signals, which are really good for APM. And having that available within Lambda lets us correlate telemetry and metrics and traces and logs to help us speed up some of the troubleshooting. We got Q developer enhancements, primarily the Q developer transform capabilities. Caylent was a launch partner for these, so we worked closely with AWS to provide feedback and help with the design of the .NET and Java transform capabilities. There's also a code transform capability that's in public preview for transforming Oracle SQL into PostgreSQL within Java applications. We got integrated analytics experience from CloudWatch to be able to expose those into OpenSearch. This you do pay for the underlying OpenSearch cluster, but otherwise you are able to access and view your CloudWatch logs and visualize them in Kibana the way that you are used to. So if you love Kibana dashboards, you can now get those with your CloudWatch logs with very little work. CloudWatch added database insights. If you're familiar with container insights, this is kind of an extension of that. And instead of spending time setting up all these like telemetry dashboards and configuring alarms and all this other good stuff, you just get it. You get a nice little dashboard for Aurora, MySQL, and Postgres, and it'll do everything from telling you, instance state to hot keys and all this other great stuff. Amazing quality of life improvement and launch from the CloudWatch team. It does cost money. Declarative policies. So this makes it easier for you to state what can and cannot be launched within your AWS organization. We got Q developer enhancements with writing documentation, with creating code reviews, and creating tests. So these are all in preview, and we at Caylent have been playing around with them, and they get our little thumbs up. We think they're good. The transformation capabilities for .NET and Java I already spoke about. We got SageMaker Canvas improvements and the ability to use Q within Canvas. Other announcements, we got a new console and experience for Systems Manager, also for chatbot. We got ECR image and inspector scan improvements. We got CloudFormation hooks that allow us to invoke custom Lambda functions. This was already somewhat possible with the transform capabilities, but these hooks are actually really, really powerful, and you can build great behavior around them, populating database tables, for instance. And then we got network performance monitoring using flow monitors. Very last but not least on the developer experience side is that the console got a nice little facelift. And I want to say congratulations to Rick Suttles, I believe, who led a lot of this work. Here's the previous, here's the new one, here's the dark mode version, here's the new dark mode version. All in all, a nice little thing. I love rounded corners. I like widgets. I love that we have table borders and lines now, because the thing in the DynamoDB console that bothered me until recently was the lack of those things. Security, identity, and compliance, 16 announcements, 11 pre-invent. We got resource control policies. These are very powerful. They allow you to set like tag policies and enforce those tag policies, and you can apply resource constraints to things like simple storage service, STS, key management service, simple queue service, and secrets manager. And you can enforce what can and cannot be exposed through those services. We got centralized management of root access for those of us who are deploy 100 plus control towers per year. This is a massive quality of life improvement. We now no longer have to log into each and every single one of the AWS accounts we create and go and add MFA or add whatever else we need to add. We can now manage all of this directly through the organization's API. There's a whole lot of other things that we should cover at a different time, but there's a lot of different updates that were enabled in the pre-invent timeframe. Amazon Cognito got a new pricing update, and basically what they did is they took all the advanced stuff and moved it into a new pricing tier. The pricing is basically like light, essentials, and plus, and the light tier is much less expensive than the previous cost of Cognito. The plus tier, or sorry, the essentials tier is the same price as old Cognito, and the plus tier is more expensive than old Cognito. This will affect people. There's this overhaul needed to happen for Cognito to remain competitive with the other offerings out there. That said, Cognito is a building block authentication service, and if you are looking to take advantage of it, it is probably the best price performer of a managed authentication service out there. It is not as easy to set up as some of the others, and that's why you can use a partner like Caylent to help you set it up. Sales. Extended threat detection for guard duty. This is just expanding the existing guard duty capabilities. They track all the MITRE ATT&CK signals and everything, and they will say, "Oh, we think we see this behavior, and so we will go ahead and identify that for you." Powered by AI and ML, and then probably just good old regular expressions as well. AWS security incident response. This is a whole thing in and of itself that we could probably go into in a very deep way, but this facilitates coordination and provides 24/7 access to security experts from the AWS customer incident response team. It's called CIRT. These are the best of the best. These are hackers turned good who are used to dealing with crises. They deal with crises all day, every day. And they're the people you want on your side when something has gone wrong, and they really do have a tremendous amount of capability to help you and recover from everything from data breaches or account takeovers to like ransomware attacks. I can't say enough good things about this team. I've had the opportunity to work with them many times over the years, and they're a very impressive set and group of people. Lots of other things here. No time to cover them, though, but the post-quantum cryptography migration plan is something that I would recommend everyone take a look at. Just think TLS 1.3. If you're not using TLS 1.3, why not? Post-quantum, do it. Business applications, supply chain. We don't really use this, but if it's interesting to you, here's the QR code. Lots of new capabilities in Amazon Connect, too many to cover in this presentation alone, but WhatsApp for Business is available. There's bot design and other capabilities. Overall, Amazon Connect continues to be a leader in the contact center space, and they also got a fancy new UI. So gone are the days of the 2015 UI, and now we have this very pretty UI on the right that you see here. Buy with AWS within AWS Marketplace. So this is the ability to purchase through AWS Marketplace that can be embedded in your own webpage. And at Caylent.com, we may be exposing this soon. A number of other new capabilities from AWS partners, new competencies, the consumer goods competency, the digital sovereignty competency, the new category within the security competency and AI security, which is very interesting. And I think Caylent will likely pursue that competency, and we will see how much effort it takes to get that. These competencies, if you're unfamiliar with them, are pretty labor intensive and proof intensive sets of evidence-based verification of skills and capabilities. Brian on my team is entirely responsible for all of the AWS competencies that we received in 2024. So I just want to say thank you to Brian for all the hard work you do.
Go team.
Partner connections. This is great. This really helps with some of the tri-party initiatives that we do with other partners. Like we'll often work with like Anthropic, or we'll often work with Datadog, say. So this partner connections capability does make it easier for us to help our customers. Now, in the last little bit, I'm going to have Brian sort of take over here and talk about the Education Equity Initiative as well as the CTO Fellows. But Brian, take it away.
Okay, so this comes from Werner's keynote, and to me, that's always the highlight of any reInvent is his keynote. And one of the things, before I talk about the education equity, is his whole theme was simplexity, taking complexity and moving it from the customer space down into the Amazon space. If you think about many of the things that Randall was talking about in the last hour and a half, it's making things simpler, but it took incredible complexity and effort on Amazon's part to make your life as customers and developers simpler. But that's what they're trying to do. Now, the education equity initiative is basically we're trying to reach out, or Amazon is trying to reach out and level the playing field and get more people exposure and access to the training that they need to be developers, or even just smart consumers in the world going forward. So they're putting a lot of effort into serving underserved learners, and so this is a wonderful program that I'm just thrilled to be indirectly part of. The next one, if we jump forward, the CTO fellowship. Werner has this program of he has the Now Go Build award that he gives for individual developers, but now he's coming up with Now Go Build CTO fellows, and he's got this initial cadre of folks who are doing amazing things around the world, like building drones that can carry medicines to outlying villages, or crowdsource the development of maps of roads and footpaths in areas that often get destroyed by natural disasters, so that you can, because if you don't know where the road was, you don't know where you need to rebuild it. So this is an amazing outreach to actually go do wonderful things around the world. Part of the effort is to give these people access to Amazon resources and mentorship, and this is done through the Hero program. And this is one of the places that I'm incredibly proud to be in a community hero, able to help these folks do this job. And I'm incredibly proud that Caylent is supporting us to do this thing for these wonderful people. So it's do good. So that's just wonderful.
I think that should be our new motto. We build cool stuff, do good.
Yep.
With that, everybody, I have one last thing to say, which is there's this thing called Builder ID. It's been around for a hot minute, but AWS really doubled down on it this year. If you haven't made one yet and you're part of the AWS community, I'd strongly encourage you to go and sign up for a Builder ID. One of the nice things they did at reInvent is they let you print out your Builder ID on this little lanyard so that you could put it on your backpack or something. I'm hopeful they'll do that again next year. The nice thing is this is like a continuous ID that keeps track of all of your certifications, of all of your skill portal stuff. And it's a good way of being able to sync between all of your different capabilities and all the different portals that exist within AWS. And I'm hopeful that it becomes the standard of taking a human and identifying them with all the cool stuff they do within the AWS community. With that, thank you for listening to this incredibly long talk. There is so much more at reInvent that we did not cover. So there is still more. Like I said, Brian and I have spent the last week after reInvent combing through all the footage, and we still haven't had a chance to fully synthesize all of the information. So our goal is to come back to you in January with more concrete demos, with more concrete views and ideas around all of these different services. But if you found this helpful, please follow us on LinkedIn. Please feel free to reach out via email. And if any of this was confusing, also hire Caylent. We'll help.